This video is brought to you by Squarespace, the all-in-one platform where entrepreneurs can easily create and customize their own personal or professional website. More on Squarespace later in the video.
So hello and welcome to another episode of Geographics. As always, I'm your interim host, Karl, and today we're talking about the Milky Way. Original article by Larry Holsworth. Cheers, Larry. In his epic poem Paradise Lost, John Milton described the Milky Way as follows: a broad and ample road whose dust is gold and pavement stars, as starts to thee appears soon in the galaxy that Milky Way which mightily, as circling zone, thou seest powdered white stars. His readers recognise the subject of his words. A glance into the night sky in Milton's England revealed the Milky Way in all of its visual glory, and as clear and recognisable as the moon. Not so today, as urban dwellers in the United Kingdom, that includes me, in Europe and across the United States, in fact all across the world, can no longer glance at the night sky and see the sprawl of the Milky Way across the heavens. The light pollution from cities, lighted highways and other sources blot it from the sky, visually speaking. Even in more rural areas, light pollution has eliminated the ability to view the centre of the galaxy, which was visible to humanity since prehistoric times. Of course, every star visible to the naked eye from Earth is technically part of the Milky Way, including the star that enables life on Earth and which we call the Sun. The Milky Way is the home galaxy for Earthbound life. It is just one of what is believed to be hundreds of billions of galaxies making up the universe. Each galaxy itself containing hundreds of billions of individual stars surrounded by hundreds and billions of planets of all types and sizes and, filled with all manner of aliens and stuff. There's got to be, right? There's got to be at least one of those planets with a little green man in it, right? Like, is it the Carl Sagan quote about life in the universe where there are two theories for whether or not extraterrestrial life exists, that it does or it doesn't, and both are equally horrifying? There's got to be something, right? Just statistically, there's got to be some weird alien out there. Anyway, time, space, and the distance are relegated to numbers which are quite incomprehensible to most. Though it cannot be seen much from Earth any longer, it continues to influence the planets and its inhabitants, as it did ancient millennia ago. It was known to civilizations across the globe long before human progress rendered it invisible to most of the population. Here is its story. If one could turn out the lights across the globe, so to speak, the centre of the Milky Way would be one of the most readily visible sights of the night sky, rivaling the moon and all of the other stars. It appeared, as it still appears when visible, as Milton described, a path across the sky. It presents a hazy collection of stars so distant they cannot be distinguished individually, at least not by the unaided human eye. As a result, they offer a milky appearance, arcing in a band which splits the sky. In Babylonian myth, that band is a tail of a dragon, killed by the god Marduk. The ancient Greeks attributed the band to spilled breast milk from the goddess Hera, caused by her pushing away the mortal son of Zeus, Heracles, when he tried to suckle from her. Zeus had placed his son at the sleeping Hera's breast in the belief that her milk would give him immortality. It's just par for the course for Zeus in ancient myth. If there was a Me Too movement for gods, Zeus would be the number one named person in it. The ancient Greek astronomers and priests identified and described 11 circles within the sky, one of which was the Milky Way. Others included the zodiac, the tropics, the equator, and so forth. Thousands of miles away in Mesoamerica, the ancient Mayans considered the Milky Way and identified it as a path followed by the dead as their souls travelled into the afterlife. The Aztecs believed that Mixcoatl brought fire to humanity and associated him with the path across the night sky. And I hope I pronounced that right, because I did go to the Mesoamerican section of the Field Museum and read all the pronunciation guides once, because they have some cool ass words. My favourite being that guy, is it Quetzalcoatl? The thunder god. Anyway, Hindu mythology, on the other hand, described the Milky Way as Akshaganga, the great Ganges, river of the sky. The ancients of Eastern Asia also described the Milky Way in terms of a river, marked by the stars Altair and Vega. The river theme appeared in ancient Hebrew and Aramaic as well, with some believing that the river of fire from the book of Daniel describes the Milky Way, Daniel 7:10. In ancient Australia, among the Aboriginal peoples, the image of a river in the sky also dominated. So you're probably starting to notice a trend here. Ancient people saw this band of light across the sky and thought, well, that looks like a river, right? Let's go. By the beginnings of the 17th century, most astronomers believed the Milky Way to be a collection of clouds and cosmic dust and other nebulous matter. In 1610, Galileo Galilei began studying the appearance of the clouds using one of his increasingly powerful telescopes. He continued to study the night sky throughout the ensuing decades. He first discovered that the light known as the Milky Way came from stars, some so distant that they were invisible to the naked eye. Galileo discovered that the stars were round, where before his observations most astronomers believed them to be simply misshapen sources of light, those of the Milky Way appearing to be densely packed together. Though Galileo derived a means of measuring the distance between them as well as the size of the stars themselves, he was not able to determine the shape of the cluster of stars already described as a galaxy. Since the angle the Earth looks upon the centre of the Milky Way is from the side, because like the Milky Way is like a big saucer. Whenever you see it, right, it's like a cool like starfish type thing made of stars. It's like super rad. Until Galileo's observations, it was widely believed by learned men of science that the number of stars in the night sky was finite, limited to those only visible through the naked eye, or roughly 3,000 to 6,000. As far as estimations go, that's a bad one, isn't it? It's like 3,000 to 6,000, several hundred billion. Together, the sky was known as the firmament. The moon, the known planets, the stars, and the sun were all embedded in the firmament as described by the creation story in Genesis. By describing the stars that were far too distant to be viewed without the aid of a telescope, Galileo established the description of the firmament to be flawed. Admittedly, he had not been the first to challenge the concept, but his use of the telescope demonstrated its flaws previously postulated by Tycho Brahe, Giordano Bruno, and Copernicus. Yet Earth's role in the structure of the galaxy, as well as that of Earth's sun, remained undefined.
Good day, everyone. I'm the tiny man who lives in Karl's shelves. Shh, don't tell him. I overheard that this video that you're watching right now is sponsored by Squarespace, a platform that lets you build and customize your own website, and it suddenly hit me. I should start a website. Now I know what you're all thinking. What would a tiny man even want with his own website? What, sell tiny clothes? To who? I've heard that Squarespace has a lot of tools for getting your story out there, and oh boy, have I seen and heard it all. For example, did you know that rats don't actually eat cheese? They don't. What they do with it is they take that cheese back to their rat cities and they use it to build statues of rat celebrities. True story. See, I need a website, and Squarespace sounds ideal. They've got a lot of blogging tools that you can use to post stories, you can post pictures, you can post videos, and you can even schedule posts, just in case you have to spend a few days hiding from a particularly enthusiastic pigeon. I can still hear the cooing. The other day, Karl left his computer on, so I had to wander over just to see if even a novice like me could make a website on Squarespace. They have got a bunch of professional templates, custom made for every situation you can think of. All you need to do is choose one, swap out the details, change up the content, and it's yours. They also have this thing called Fluid Engine, which is apparently not a water-based train. What it actually is this pretty advanced web design system where you can add anything, move anything around, customize anything, just by simply dragging and dropping. I'll let you in on a little secret as well. If you go to squarespace.com/geographics, you can save 10% off your first purchase of a website or domain by using the code GEOGRAPHICS. Oh yeah, after years of being the little guy, I'm finally gonna be a big deal, and nothing and no one can stand in my way. Karl left the window open. Oh no!
Technically, all of the stars visible to the naked eye in the night sky are part of the galaxy known as the Milky Way. So are their planets and moons, the nebula that appear in the sky, comets and other heavenly bodies, Earth and the Sun and its solar systems are all part of the Milky Way galaxy. Also part of the galaxy are anywhere between 200 to 400 billion stars, according to most recent estimates, the bodies that orbit them as planets and the moons that orbit those planets. If there are 200 billion stars, each with at least one planet orbiting them, obviously there are at least 200 billion planets within that galaxy. Most astronomers and scientists believe there are many more than that, but, conservative estimates and all that good stuff. That portion of the night sky, which has long been described as the Milky Way, is part of the overall galaxy, but viewed separately. It rises from the horizon into the sky, arching across it in a band of light approximately 30 degrees wide. Some areas of the path appear brighter than others, including the large Sagittarius dust cloud as part of the central bulge of the galaxy. That's right, the galaxy has got a bulge. Hell yeah. I love my job sometimes. I didn't know when I started recording this that the galaxy has got, there's that celestial, dick bulge going on. The more you know. Within the band described by the path of dark areas where dust obscures the light from yet more distant stars. Despite its prominent appearance in the sky, the Milky Way is not very bright. Light pollution, as mentioned, prevents more than 3/4 of the Earth's population from viewing it unaided. Even in areas where light pollution is not really a problem, in like rural areas, for example, or far out at sea, it's not always entirely visible. The light of a full moon obscures it, and even half moons can prevent close observation until the moon drops below the horizon. The centre of the galaxy lies in the direction of the constellation Sagittarius. It is inclined roughly 60 degrees from Earth's orbital plane, meaning the centre of the galaxy is viewed largely from its side. It splits the sky into two hemispheres and for most of the population of the Earth appears directly overhead, though at distances which seem to vary based on the time of year. One of the leading thinkers and philosophers of the period of Western history known as the Enlightenment, Emmanuel Kant, was raised in the Lutheran faith. His early education included a literal interpretation of the Bible and its teachings about the creation of the universe, rather than a science and mathematics-based one. Yet his later education and his own work led him to become a leader in both of those disciplines. In 1755, Kant published a work titled Universal Natural History and Theory of the Heavens. Quite a mouthful, but one that was very important. In it, he postulated that the solar system evolved from the collapse of a molecular cloud, or clouds called nebulae. Kant's reasoning also included the theory that the Milky Way was an immense disk of stars formed from a larger cloud of gases and dust, so pretty accurate given my understanding of what the universe is. In Kant's view, the Milky Way was held together through gravitational force, in the same manner that the solar system was held together. Kant postulated then that Earth and the solar system, which it was a part, were inside of a giant spinning disk, which accounted for the appearance of the Milky Way as a band across the night sky. Kant also proposed the existence of other galaxies outside of the Milky Way, visible as nebulae in the sky. 30 years after Kant's ideas were promulgated, that's a fun word to say, the astronomer William Herschel attempted to describe the shape of the Milky Way. From counting the number of stars in various sections of the sky, he derived a round shape for the galaxy, though he placed the solar system near its centre. Like, I guess we can do the Simpsons quote of like, yes, Homer, your theory of a donut-shaped universe is interesting. I might have to steal it. And then, like, Stephen Hawking did some work for that. We might actually live in a donut-shaped universe. Just another small example of The Simpsons somehow predicting reality. By the mid-19th century, using increasingly powerful and expensive telescopes, astronomers were able to distinguish the spiral-shaped nebulae, confirming Kant's hypothesis that there were other galaxies besides the Milky Way. By the early 20th century, on the other hand, two distinct schools of thought had emerged. One held that the Milky Way was the sole galaxy, in effect, the limits of the entire universe. This view was held by astronomer Harlow Shapley, who also postulated that other discoveries of spiral nebulae were within the bounds of the Milky Way galaxy itself. Heber Curtis, another noted astronomer and physicist, disputed Shapley's view, holding that there were other galaxies of unknown but immense numbers, and that the Milky Way was but part, but not the extent, of the entire universe. The two met at the Smithsonian Institute in 1920 in an event known as the Shapley-Curtis Debate, or more frequently as the Great Debate. Not fist fight though, is probably how it should have gone down. Because that's the thing, like, do scientists ever fist fight? Because I imagine, like, you know, especially when it's something like with science, and you're like, you know, you're expert in your field, and you got the numbers right in front of you. How would it not devolve into a fist fight? Anyway, the following year, both participants published papers describing their views and a refutation of their opponent's work. Curtis pointed out that the bands of darker areas in nebulae, which could also be found in observations of the Milky Way, known as zones of avoidance, these zones established that the Milky Way was a spiral nebulae, with other, especially in the Andromeda Nebulae, separate from it. Near the end of the decade, Edwin Hubble, a name I recognise, demonstrated that Andromeda was far distant from the Milky Way, establishing it as a separate galaxy altogether. However, subsequent study has established that both astronomers, Shapley and Curtis, were correct in some points and wrong in others. For example, Curtis placed the solar system near the centre of the galaxy. It is now known that the solar system is nearer the edge of the galaxy, as postulated by Shapley. Both sides erred in their estimates of the actual size of a galaxy, with the correct measurement more or less splitting the difference between their two opinions. So, yeah. A parsec is a unit to measure length. It is used to establish distance between objects outside of the solar system. It is roughly equivalent to 3.26 light years, which equates to about 30.9 trillion kilometers. In astronomy, the term parsec is the preferred unit of measurement rather than light year, popularized by science fiction. A kiloparsec is roughly 1,000 parsecs. And I guess this is where someone in the comments is going to talk about the line in Star Wars, like complete the Kessel Run in this many parsecs, which doesn't make sense. And the obvious explanation is that just George Lucas didn't know much about the universe or how you measure distance and time. Anyway, a light year is roughly the equivalent to 9.45 trillion kilometers, or the distance light travels in a vacuum over the course of 1 Julian year, 365 and 1/4 days for anyone who doesn't remember. It is often misconstrued as a measurement of time, though it refers to linear distance rather than elapsed time. But I guess that's a pretty common misconception, like a light year, but then it's pretty aptly named. It's the distance light travels in 1 year. I can see how people would assume it's like a measurement of time, not distance, if you didn't really know that. Within the solar system, which does include Earth, distances are usually measured in kilometers for the metric system or miles in the imperial system. Within the solar system, which includes Earth, distances are usually measured in kilometers or miles. Outside of the solar system, for example, the distance between the Earth and the nearest star other than the Sun, Proxima Centauri, is given as approximately 1.3 parsecs. In science fiction, where the distance is usually given in light years, is measured as 4.24 light years away. That second measure means that if one were to match the speed of light and maintain it as a constant velocity, it would require 4.24 calendar years to cover the distance between the Earth and Proxima Centauri. Earth's home galaxy is immense in a manner which is quite simply mind-boggling. It is a spiral galaxy, meaning that if one were to somehow look down upon it from the top, as it were, it would appear to be a pinwheel. Its area of greatest extent from the centre is called the isophotal diameter. Isophotal refers to the imaginary line drawn between the outermost stars of a galaxy, and the Milky Way's isophotal diameter measures 26.8 kiloparsecs, give or take 1.1 kiloparsecs. By contrast, if one were to look from the side and measure the thickness of the galaxy at its arms, it would measure only 306.5 parsecs, more or less. The Milky Way is, from one perspective, a giant rotating pinwheel containing up to 400 billion stars and an unknown number of solar systems and planets. It is far from the only galaxy out there. Based on NASA's research analyses of the universe, there are about 2 trillion galaxies in terms of size. Ours, the Milky Way, is more or less average. The distance across the Milky Way from one side to its diametric opposite is approximately 30 kiloparsecs. Again, looking down at the spiral from the top, the galaxy appears to have at its centre a thick band of light composed of stars. Prior to the 21st century, it was believed that 4 major arms emanated from the central band, spiraling around it. They were termed Norma, Sagittarius, Perseus, and Centaurus. Numerous older publications still refer to those major arms, while substructures branching out from them. More recent data revealed from NASA research considers the Milky Way to consist of 2 major arms, designated Scutum Centaurus and Perseus. Between them are located minor arms, including Norma and Sagittarius, and even smaller arms called spurs, including the Orion spur located between Sagittarius and Perseus. If observed from the top, one could locate the Sun and its solar system, including planet Earth, within the Orion spur, which sits roughly 8 kiloparsecs from the centre of the galaxy, the galactic centre, which is located in the thick central band. Thus, when someone on Earth looks up to observe the Milky Way, they are actually looking out at the bands and the central mass which makes up the shape of the galaxy. The galactic centre is where the Milky Way appears brightest to an Earthbound observer. At its centre is a massive black hole known as Sagittarius-a. It releases radio signals measured by radio telescopes located at several points on Earth. Sagittarius-a is in diameter about the same distance as the planet Mercury to the Sun at its point of closest approach, roughly 46 million kilometres. In addition to radio signals, Sagittarius-a also emits X-rays, gamma rays, and infrared. Aliens. Given the number of stars and planets in the Milky Way galaxy alone, it would seem the possibility of extraterrestrial life is more than a probability. In 2009, NASA launched the Kepler Space Probe, a telescope designed and deployed to identify Earth-like planets orbiting other stars within the galaxy. The data accumulated by Kepler applied only to the section of the Milky Way directly explored by the probe, which is to say a minute portion of the galaxy as a whole. That data applied to the rest of the galaxy allow for certain extrapolations and conclusions. Kepler operated from 2009 till mid-November 2018. Its mission was to identify planets orbiting stars within their habitable zones, which matched the characterizations of Earth in a manner believed to support life. It was not designed to detect life, nor did it do so. It was designed to identify planets where the ideal conditions for the existence of life as known on Earth were most favourable. It did often get misconstrued, like it's out there looking for aliens. Like, no. It's looking for planets similar to Earth where life is statistically more likely to appear based on, us existing. So what did it find? Well, Kepler identified over 500,000 stars which met its programmed criteria during its 9 years of operation, and around 2,600 planets. In October 2018, Kepler ran out of fuel and NASA shut down the mission. A follow-up mission using a more advanced spacecraft launched earlier that same year and continues to survey for suitable planets. Meanwhile, data from Kepler was applied to the rest of the galaxy via mathematical models. According to the data accumulated by Kepler and analysed by NASA and other scientists, a conservative estimate claimed that as many as 40 billion Earth-sized planets could be orbiting within the habitable zones of Sun-like stars within the Milky Way alone. And the nearest may be as close as 3.7 parsecs from Earth, so only a couple 100 million miles. In April 2022, the Astrophysical Journal published the results of a study conducted by the Department of Astronomy at China's Beijing Normal University. The study concluded that within the Milky Way galaxy alone, as many as 42,777, more or less, civilizations living on planets located within the galaxy. They divided their scenarios into an optimistic, hopeful for civilizations, and pessimistic, doubtful for any civilizations. Even the pessimistic scenarios yielded a mathematical probability of over 100 civilizations evolving to the point of being able to communicate with Earth. While it is true that the results were published on April 1st, a date with well-known connotation in Western society, the study addressed what is known as the Fermi paradox, or the Fermi paradox, I think, which asks if intelligent life exists away from Earth, why hasn't it yet communicated with us? Except for biblical literalists and young Earth Society adherents, life on Earth is about 4 billion years old. Life elsewhere could be anywhere on the evolutionary scale measured by that span. According to those who believe its eventual detection is inevitable. Certainly, it would seem that the mathematical probabilities bear that out. It is unfortunately true that viewing the Milky Way from most of Earth is no longer practical. One cannot simply look to the heavens from one's backyard and see the sky's most dramatic sights. Its best viewing opportunities are offered to those far from populated areas where the lights, which are the inevitable result of civilization, cannot interfere. Even then, as noted earlier, the phases of the moon affect the ability to view a small portion of the immense galaxy, which we call home. When one does find a suitable viewing site free from light pollution and distractions, one observes pretty much the same view that was more or less seen by Aristotle, the Kaisers, the Magi, when they journeyed to Bethlehem, and then the cave dwellers and hunter-gatherers which made up primitive man. The Milky Way has been part of humanity's existence from the beginning of time, or perhaps it is more accurate to describe humanity as part of the Milky Way. After all, humanity's shared home, the planet we all occupy, is a tiny piece of the vast structure. As manned spaceflight continues to concentrate on the solar system, NASA, the European Space Agency, China, and other entities continue to find ways to explore their home galaxy. These efforts are focused on unmanned space probes and telescopes. Radio telescopes operate from Earth, sophisticated computer software, and modelling. As of 2022, despite the predictions of the Star Trek universe and other science fiction worlds, human achieving speeds which match or exceed the speed of light is generally regarded as impossible. Sorry guys. Yet some lingering and enticing possibilities intrigue many. Time, according to Einstein, is relative and thus can be warped in relation to other factors, such as the factor of distance, for example. Perhaps someday in the not too distant future, humans will discover the means of warping time, allowing them to achieve speeds in relation to other factors which will propel them to the distant edges of the galaxy, and even beyond. Whether humanity ever ventures outside the galaxy, which is its home to the sun and the Earth, is unknown. For now, for the foreseeable future, knowledge of the galaxy known as the Milky Way must remain limited by the inability to venture beyond the capacity of the technology we've invented. So thank you for tuning into this episode of Geographics. As noted at the start, the video was based on an article submitted by Larry Holsworth. Links to their socials, if they were provided, can be found below. I'm your host, Karl Smallwood. I'm also hosting on the sister sites Geographics, Biographics, and Top 10s. I have my own channel, Facting with Karl Smallwood. I also run another channel called Wiki Weekends. Both of them are a lot more casual and admittedly less well researched than this one, because this was a long ass video to record, but nonetheless I learned a lot during it and hope you did too. Otherwise, I hope you leave a like, a comment, subscribe, all that good stuff, and have the day you all deserve.